In September 2000, IGN's review of Hogs of War would be quoted as saying,
"Frankly, though it features a bunch of overgrown 3D porkers on large-scale battlefields, this title's an unapologetic spin-off of Worms."
Despite the comparison, IGN would give Hogs of War a respectable score of 7.4 out of 10. In 2004, GameSpot wrote a very short article on Hogs of War, stating,
"The game could loosely be described as a 3D version of Worms."
And again 2 years later in 2006, noting that
"The game consists of strategy reminiscent of Worms and Bomberman."
The site would then go on to call Hogs of War mediocre, with a score of 5.5 out of 10.
Are you serious?
While the newest Worms title at that time, Worms 3D, would receive a generous score of 7.5. Other sites like Metacritic followed the same path, scoring Hogs of War with a modest 62 out of 100, while giving Worms 3D anything from 69 to 74 out of 100. Now you might be thinking, but Pin, who cares? We all know that game journalists and their scores mean nothing. I mean, just look at Cyberpunk as the latest example.
Dick.
That is true, and I agree that these are just numbers at the end of the day, but what I want to know is what makes Hogs of War a 7.4? Why is it always compared to Worms, and will it ever be able to get away from such a comparison? The short answer to that last question is no, because game journalists will always be like,
"Oh look, it is a 3D game, it has the turn-based system, therefore it must be a clone of Worms 3D, ha ha, I am good at my job, la 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 la."
Okay, first of all, Hogs came out in the year 2000 for the PS1, 3 years before Worms 3D was released for the PS2. My beef with game journalists is how they barely seem to do any research into the game or its community first before reporting on the so-called facts. I mean, just look at the same 7.4 out of 10 review from IGN, stating that the group of playable teams include the sushi swine as China? This article was last updated in 2018, for God's sake! Such journalists are just so out of touch with the games community, not just for Hogs of War, but others too. They just seem to get the simplest details completely wrong. Again, if we look at this article from Gaming Bible published in April of last year, they state that
"The gameplay was never quite as streamlined or rewarding as other anarchic turn-based battle sims like Worms."
But why is it such a common statement among game journalist circles? Yes, Worms 3D is the closest thing you can compare Hogs of War to in regards to first impressions, because they are both 3D, they are both in third person, and they both have an array of weapons for the player to use. But you see, that's where the comparison ends. They are also on 2 different consoles. They also include different features, mechanics, metas, strategies, and as I've already stated, they were released at completely different times. When Worms 3D came out back in 2003, the gaming world had shifted up a notch to the era of the PS2, so the PS1 was beginning to seem outdated despite it still receiving new releases with other titles. So to me, the hardware difference alone between Hogs and Worms 3D immediately calls an unfair advantage. Don't get me wrong though, I enjoyed and played Worms 3D a lot as a kid, but even back then when I was 9 years old, when I owned both Hogs of War and Worms 3D, I could indeed see that they were 2 completely different games. Same genre, but different games. The funniest part though, if we look back at those review numbers, Worms 3D received an IGN score of 7.5 upon release.
Nice approach!
7.5, like come on, for a game that in all game journalists' minds is miles ahead of Hogs, that is more streamlined and rewarding, it scored just a tiny bit higher overall compared to Hogs of War. It just makes you think though, what Hogs of War could have achieved if the game had been released on PS2. But then again, it probably would have ended up being just decimated by Worms in the sales department. And you want to know the worst part about the whole game journalism business and Hogs of War? It just seems like they have no idea that Hogs of War Reheated exists as a project. It just hasn't been reported on at all. I've had people commenting and messaging me in Discord asking where they can find any other information on the project besides the stuff I've already mentioned in videos, because there is nothing out there right now. Like, come on, Gaming Bible, oh, Hogs of War developer, would love to see it remastered one day. They reposted that article twice in the space of 5 months, back in August and December of 2020. I even went so far as to email Gaming Bible directly to tell them about the Hogs of War community and Reheated, and the fact that we have a Discord server that now has over 600 members, including former developers of the game and the current ones that are working on Reheated. Did I hear anything back? Of course not. But to date, the only news outlet to report on Reheated has been from GamePro, a German-based website that initially contacted me for a scope on the project. I pointed them in the direction of Luke, the lead developer on Reheated, and from there they were able to ask a whole bunch of questions and actually report the facts. You'll find a link to the article below. Big thank you to Hans as well for including my channel in the article as well. But from that article alone, the Hogs of War community Discord server then received a huge influx of fans and players, which again makes you wonder how big the community would be able to grow if other journalists would actually pick up on the project's existence. Anyway, what was the point of this video? Oh yeah, Hogs of War is a 7.4 out of 10. I don't know, I think game journalists will always be biased towards the Worms... the Worms franchise. Oh, I'm dying. Yeah, they'll always be biased towards the Worms franchise because it's been around for longer, the game has continued into the modern era of gaming, and Hogs of War to some extent is old and clunky. But despite its flaws, the community is alive, we are here, we are active, we are doing stuff, and we are trying to attract new players and fans of the game, both from the original and for the upcoming Reheated project. On the whole, I have no quarrel with Worms as a game. It's something I enjoy playing from time to time. It's just become mundane when you read another article about Hogs of War that always seems to compare the two without any real thought behind it. Hey, so yeah, that was kind of a weird video, but I guess just a build-up of emotion after reading a bunch of bad articles relating to Hogs. But anyway, do you agree with my thoughts? Do you think Hogs of War earns its 7.4 rating? Let me know everything you have to say in the comments, and once again, a huge thank you to every single one of you, including my channel members and patrons over on Patreon, which, by the way, has recently received an update to include new rewards for different tiers, so head on over to my Patreon for more details on that one. Links to everything, as I've said already, will be in the description. And overall, that is going to wrap it up for this funky video. Again, hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you all later for the next one.